Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be watercoloring feathers, and you're going to have a lot of opportunity to paint multiple feathers, because I know once I got started, I my first one was a little scary, and then the second one I got a little more confident, and then the third one I started doing kind of different colors, and so it's kind of fun to experiment. Now, out on the tables today, I'm going to have lots and lots of different samples, because I find that sometimes I find it easier to look at something that someone has painted, like these have been painted by someone else, or sometimes it's easier to actually look at a picture of a real feather. Like these are actual pictures of real feathers. So you're just going to have to discover that for yourself. But what I want to show you right now, and I think maybe I'll maybe do this one right here, is just how to do the basic shape. We saw with the flight feathers and with the tail feathers that the tail feathers are going to have a rachis that's straight, and the flight feathers are going to have one that's a little bit more curved. But what I like to do is to kind of pretend that my rachis is invisible, and I do the left vein first, and then I do the right vein. Now, because I'm doing this feather, the first thing I notice is that I want to start with the lightest color. And my paper is already white, so I'm not going to paint it white, but there's almost like a gray color. So you want to start kind of conservative. So I'm going to dip this into my gray paint over here, and I'm going to paint the left side of the vein. So I'm going to paint what looks like my rachis here. It's not my rachis, but it's the left side of my vein. And now I'm going to load up with a little bit more gray. I'm going to come here and I'm going to paint the outside edge of my feather. Now, you're going to notice I like to say paint as light as a feather when painting a feather. You just want to be so light. You just want to go nice and easy. Notice I even made mine like a little bit wobbly, and I'll even show you on the other side something else you could do. So now I'm dipping it in water, I'm putting it in my gray, and I'm just going to come here and I'm going to fill up the whole thing. And I'm hardly touching the paper. I'm just being very, very gentle. You're going to start to realize that with watercolor, the paint really does most of the work for you. So right now I'm doing the left side of the vein. And I noticed earlier in my feather that it had kind of white near the top. And I could even come and add that in later to make it look like this so that it looks more white along the top. But then it had some blue. So now what I'll do is I'll say, okay, so I have a gray base. So now I'm going to grab a little bit of blue, and I'm real gentle with my watercolors. And now I'm going to come in here. Now you're going to notice that because I already painted it with this gray, do you see how it's just kind of going, brrr? Look, even if I lift it up, how it starts to run down. This is what's so fun about watercolor. Don't feel like you have to do all the work. Let the watercolor do the work for you, because you're not going to believe by the time it's done that if you just kind of let it do its own thing, you're going to end up with something beautiful. And the thing is that even if it doesn't even end up looking like the feather that I'm painting, believe me, there's for sure somewhere in the world there is a feather that looks like the one that you just did. Trust me. So I'm just coming and I'm adding some blue in here. And this just happens to be the feather that I did. And notice again, I'm just doing the left side of my feather. Now the next thing that I noticed was that it had some black stripes in it. So I'm going to put my brush gently into the black. And I'm going to come here, and because it has stripes, I'm just going to kind of go like this. Now, if I want it light, I can leave it like that. But I actually think I want it a little bit darker. So I'm going to come here, and I can come here, and here, and here, and I'm just adding some stripes into my feather. And just let it be. Don't keep going over the same thing and make this big old hole in your paper and get all uptight and be like, oh, look exactly right. It doesn't matter. Just make something beautiful. You're just inspired by God's creation, and you're just trying to make something of your own that's similar. And it might be your own creation. Okay, so I now am pretty happy with this. I could go back later and do something with it. But now I really want to get that feeling of the barbs. Now, remember, with a real feather, if we have the rachis here, this is the vein on the left, this is the vein on the right, but notice the barbs are always going at a diagonal going up. They don't come straight out. They don't do anything weird. They kind of go this direction. So what I may want to do here is dip my brush, or you could even take a smaller brush, like a detail brush, and I can dip it into the water and load it up with a little bit of black. And I could come here and just add just a few little hints of my barbs coming up this direction. I don't have to do a lot. I can just do a few. But notice that I'm always making them point upwards. I could even come up here towards the top, near the top, and I could kind of define my barbs up there a little bit better. And I could go along the edge. So now let me show you what we're going to do next. Remember how I told you that we were going to make our rachis initially kind of invisible? Well, you're going to understand what I mean by that now. Because I'm going to go back and I'm now going to do the right-hand side of my feather. And I'm going to put it starting the same way I did last time with the gray. But this time when I do, I'm going to leave just a little space in between. And if you mess up and they touch, man, I'm being all wobbly right now. See, it really is going to look fine no matter what. If you end up getting into the other one, no big deal. But just try and leave a space there. Now, I'm going to pretend that my feather has like a little break in it. So I'm actually going to come here and then go like this so that it looks like there's a little space in my feather. A lot of people like to do that a lot, where they put a whole bunch of spaces in their feathers, and some people don't do it at all. It's totally up to you whether you want it to look like there are spaces in your feathers or not. So I just did this, and now I'm gonna dip it in again and fill it up. A lot of people say that one side of a feather is usually darker than the other. So if yours end up the same, great. If they end up that one's darker than the other, well, then you're probably kind of along the way that God created feathers anyway. So you really don't have to worry about much. So the last time I started to add some blue. So here I go again. I'm going to come here and just let the blue do its little magical dance all over my gorgeous feather. And it's just so happy. It's just going here and there and everywhere. And I can just let it drift wherever it wants to go, which is kind of fun. I could even come and, maybe pick up like just a little bit of a different color blue and put that in there. Ooh, that's almost like a little bit of a turquoise. So maybe on this side, I'd have just a little bit more of a color in there. So I'm just kind of letting it do its happy little dance. Let the watercolor do it. And again, I cannot stress to you enough, please do not, don't go whack-a-doodle schmoodle. Just let the paint do its thing. I'm hardly touching the paper. I cannot stress to you enough. You hardly want to touch the paper. Now, I'm going to come and pick up my black, and I'm going to put in some of those stripes. Go over here. I don't have to, but I can. Because I'm the artist, and I get to make my feather however I want. Ha ha ha. So, I'm putting those stripes in there. I can come up here and put some of those other stripes in here, like that. Just kind of darken it up. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun here now towards the end. I cannot believe how every time I'm making a feather and I go, does it really look very feathery to me? Oh, look at me. Here I'm getting going. I'm drawing some barbs in there. Oh, I just can't stop. Okay, down here towards the bottom, we need to get the bottom of your feather here. So I'm going to come like this and this. And I now have the quill part of the feather. And now is the part where, I'm not kidding you, the minute you do this, all of a sudden it starts to look feathery. Pick up a nice little detail brush and decide what color you want your down feathers to be. So maybe I'll just stick with black. And this is where you have it right here, and you're just going to come here and go, woo, 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 woo. You're going to go, da-da-da-da. And you can even make that noise. It usually helps. I'm hardly touching the paper, but I'm just doing like this little squiggly, oh, my hand's so wiggly, squiggly, oh my goodness, I can hardly control myself kind of thing. And look, it ends up making it look so real. It's ridiculous. Just that little trick of like, oh, my hand's so wobbly. Oh, you do that, and all of a sudden, I love that. Love that, love that. Now, this side is still drying over here, and I could just kind of leave it and go paint another feather and then come back. But since we don't have that kind of time, I'm just going to now come and do my rackus just a little bit. So I'm going to come here and just kind of go down the center a little bit. Or I could just leave it white. It's up to you. I could come down here and fill in this part a little bit. You could quit. Or here I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do a few barbs on this side coming up. Lots of different options, my friends. There's really no terrible or right or wrong way of doing it. You just kind of keep playing around with things and seeing how it goes. Next week, this is a feather that I painted. I don't know if you can tell, but after it dried, I took a white pen and some black pen and I kind of outlined it. There will be opportunities for that next week. So boys and girls, have a lot of fun doing this. Just please be very nice to my watercolor sets. I love these so much. Do not even think about going and starting to mix them up. That would be so sad. We want to treat them with a lot of respect. Remember, this is just a nice, slow, relaxing, calm activity where you're going to attempt to draw some different feathers. Have fun.